different race and color from yourself, do not mistrust them and withdraw yourself into your shell of conventionality, but rather be glad and show them kindness. And then simply let your vision be world embracing. So with this view of diversity and thinking about what it takes to listen to each other in order to truly understand and build relationship, three main focal points came to mind, and we'll explore those a little bit more today. The first is that we should listen as a sign of love and respect for other people. We should listen to understand our differences and not to react to them. And we should listen with the goal of seeking truth together rather than prove ourselves and our opinions right. So in relation to that first point, think of just a time where you truly felt heard and listened to. I'm willing to bet you also felt loved and respected and valued when that happened. When we listen to understand our differences, we have to ask ourselves, what is the purpose of this interaction? What is my goal? Is my goal to draw closer to somebody? And if so, I have to listen in order to suspend judgment and create an immediate reaction. And for that third point, we can safely assume that our perspectives are incomplete because we are limited in what we're able to experience as people on this earth. And so we need to listen to others in order to come to a more complete truth. In terms of listening as a sign of love and respect for another person, this quote is one that I found in preparing for a different workshop of a similar theme that always strikes me. Each person you meet is an aspect of yourself clamoring for love. This is an interesting way to approach other people, especially when that person is presenting a point of view, a lifestyle, a perspective that we don't agree with. So what does that mean? How would we interact with that person if we had this assumption that they are an aspect of ourselves, clamoring to be loved and understood as well? I've included a short 3-minute video clip from a larger talk by a man named Tom Price. He is a Baha'i speaker who often speaks on topics either directly related to the faith or from the viewpoint, topics from the viewpoint of the Baha'i perspective. I found a video of his. He has a lot of really interesting talks. One of them is about the 12 signs of love. And I was revisiting this video recently and realized that he included listening as a sign of love. A lot of what he has to say mirrors my point of view as well and ideas that I have. So I'm just going to quickly play a clip.
You know, you learn so much.
Sorry about that. I'll just quickly play a clip and then we will look at some of what he says together.
They say, well, I did so-and-so and so-and-so. I went to Paris, I went to this, and say, oh, well, I did such and such and such and such. He says, well, yeah, but I did this. And all they're doing is trying to pull the conversation back towards them, and then they're pulling it back towards them. And it's like a tennis match. If one of them would just relax and allow the other person to speak about themselves and to listen very hard, listen intently, you know, you learn so much by listening to other people. You get so much more out of life by listening than you do by speaking. In fact, they say the reason that God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth is so that you could listen twice as much as you speak. But this is the key to love, is listening. If you want to love someone, if you're going to a meeting tomorrow, if you're going to talk to your children or something, learn first to listen. Not just listen, but understand. Now there is a key to understanding people. A key to understanding people, and that is always remember that everybody is right according to their own frame of reference. This is a very important principle. In science, we know this. In science, we know that truth is dependent on what they call frame of reference. So something is true depending on its location in space and in time and its motion and so on. So if I look at something that's a long bar like this and I look from here, it looks like that. But if I look at it from this spatial frame of reference, it looks like a dot. If it's moving, it looks like something else. Do you understand? We call that truth based on frame of reference. Depending on the frame of reference, something is either true or not true, and that's the way it happens to be in science. This is also true of people. Everybody is right according to their frame of reference. If somebody believes something that you don't believe, they are not wrong according to their frame of reference. They couldn't possibly be. Would you understand? Something has caused them to come to that belief. Now, it also logically follows you cannot change someone's opinion, but you can change their frame of reference, and their opinion will automatically change. This is what good drama and good art and various other forms of persuasion do. They enable people to see things from a different perspective rather than trying to just convince people. You know the old saying, walk a mile, before you criticize someone, walk a mile in their shoes. And then there's the other saying that then when you do criticize them, you're a mile away from them and you've got their shoes. So, it's better all the way around. The point is, until you look at a person, listen to them, you're not loving them. And then when you listen to them, do not disagree with them. Say, that differs from my frame of reference. Why is it? What frame of reference are they coming from that causes that to appear true to them? And this leads to true understanding. And this is the only way we are going to overcome all of the issues in the world of disunity. Think how much disunity is in the world based on prejudice. Think of prejudice based on race. Think of prejudice based on gender. Think of prejudice based on class. Think of prejudice based on religious background. Think of prejudice based on national backgrounds, nations, and so on, or all combined. Someone can be of a different race, of a different religion, a different country, maybe a different gender. In other words, these are completely consuming the world. And all of them can be overcome by this particular sign of love, to learn to listen to people, to understand that they are right from their frame of reference, and to learn to accept them. Because without understanding, we are never going to come to any higher form of love. So.
Okay, so Tom Price presents some really interesting and compelling points of view that we'll look at in more depth. One of the things he mentions is that we must listen to understand, right, our differences rather than to react to them. Earlier in that clip, I don't think it was part of what was played, he references Stephen Covey and the quote, "Seek first to understand, then to be understood." This reminds me of something that I read recently in John Lewis's book, Across That Bridge. He talks about how, during the freedom rides and the activism that he was involved in the South in the 60s, of course, these initiatives were often met with hostility and with violence. And even in the midst of being attacked verbally and physically by people who did not agree with what he was saying or doing or advocating for, he and his cohort found it vital to remember their purpose. Their purpose was to lessen the divide between themselves and the people who were opposing them, not to widen the divide. And so they found it essential to be open-minded, to listen, to show those people respect and regard in order to understand them, and so to then be understood by them. And that can sometimes be a very long and arduous process, but often is one of the most successful ways to actually build bridges and come closer to people that we do not agree with. So we need to be open to understanding and to receiving new information. Now, we don't necessarily have to agree with people in order to understand them. By understanding, we are simply allowing someone to present their beliefs and to show that they are valued, even if we don't personally agree. I had a professor in college who taught courses in religion and depth psychology. And he would sometimes say regarding the content he was sharing, imagine I'm a guest in your home. I'm going to come in and rearrange your furniture for a little while. And if you don't like it, you can always change it when I leave. And that's kind of how we can think about listening. We don't have to agree with someone's point of view in order to validate them and their experiences by understanding where they're coming from. In fact, we can assume that when we disagree with someone, it's only a sign that we are experiencing the limits of our own understanding. Which segues nicely into this last point. We should listen to seek truth together, not to prove ourselves right. Tom Price said something in the video. He said, everyone is right according to their own frame of reference. You can't change someone's mind, but you can change their frame of reference. This is vital when listening to other people who do not believe what we believe, especially if we are seeking to broaden our understanding of what is true and what is reality. This reminded me of the elephant analogy I'm sure we're all familiar with. In this picture here, we've got an elephant and a group of people around the elephant blindfolded. So they don't have access to what the bigger picture is. They don't know the reality of this organism in front of them. All they know is what they have immediate access to. So the person in the front of the elephant is holding the tusk, and he says, well, this is long and smooth and pointy. It has to be a spear. At the same time, the person at the back of the elephant is holding the tail, and he said, no, this is soft and thin and kind of wiry. I think it's a rope. Meanwhile, the person at the tusk is holding it, and they're like, you are both completely off base. This is a snake. I know for a fact I felt a snake before. This feels just like a snake, and so on. And this is a really good analogy for the way we perceive reality and why it's important to listen to each other. If each of these people is committed to their personal experience as being the only true and valid point of view, they miss out on a whole new reality. And it's important to acknowledge that each of these people are right according to their frame of reference, but they are wrong at the same time in terms of the greater truth, the greater reality in front of them. So unless we can both express the reality of our own experiences and listen to the completely valid reality of others, we will never be able to see the bigger picture, to understand a greater sense of truth. I wanted to kind of wrap up by presenting this idea. This is a quote from the Baha'i faith that has always struck me. It says, the shining spark of truth cometh forth only after the clash of differing opinions. The shining spark of truth cometh forth only after the clash of differing opinions. This is kind of revolutionary in our current society in the way we dialogue with people who are different from ourselves. Most of us tend to stay in silos of people who think like we do, believe like we do, share our opinions and our values. And while that feels really good, it's impossible to broaden our horizons and come to a greater understanding unless we seek out the opportunity to experience different opinions, to have those respectful confrontations where we can come to a greater truth together. So I would like to suggest that listening is both a skill we can acquire as well as a muscle that we can exercise. So how do we do that? How do we get out of our own bubbles, get out of our own silos, and actually practice that muscle of listening to people that we do not agree with? Further, how do we react when we experience an idea or a person that we find completely offensive and repugnant? I think most of us tend to avoid the situations. We tend to withdraw, at worst, to instigate an argument or a fight, not a dialogue, but an argument, which is understandable. Some things we hear and see are so offensive to us, it's hard not to react emotionally. I'd like to share a personal experience that happened a few years ago as an example of how we can possibly begin to work through these differing opinions to build a more united and understanding society. And I'm sure we all have experiences like this. But in a previous job I was working in, I had a work friend who was about opposite from me in every way you can imagine. I'm a young female person of color from the Baha'i faith. He was an older white male who was raised Catholic, but we got along really well. We had a good working relationship and we would often chat. Our differences never really came up in a significant way. And then one day, I don't even remember why this came up or how it came up, but he said, you know, I don't really agree with Blacks and whites marrying. And I was caught completely off guard because if you know me, you'll know that my mom is Black and my dad is white. They've been married for 38 years and raised a happy, healthy family. And my husband is white. And so hearing this from someone who I found or thought to be a friend completely threw me off guard. I was hurt. I was angry. I was just completely ready to withdraw and end the relationship even. How could I possibly continue to be friends with someone who thought that my very existence was wrong? So I worked through those initial reactions and by the grace of God just said, well, why do you think that? What makes you feel that way? And he told me about his father and how he grew up and the ideals he was raised with. And I said, well, my parents are interracial and Jacob's white. And I forget what he even said after that point. But all I remember is that the conversation ultimately came to this really beautiful and spiritual place where we were so bonded in the things that we had in common. And if I had shut down, which was my initial inclination, that opportunity would have never happened. And I don't know if he changed his point of view. I don't know if he still believes what he said. He might. That's not really what's important. What's important to me is that we were able to establish a relationship and maintain that relationship, express our differing points of view respectfully, and still understand that it does not change the core of who that person is. Like Tom Price says, everyone is right depending on their frame of reference. He has things in his life that caused him to think that. And I have things in my life that cause me to think differently. But we can never have access to those different experiences if we shut down. So I would like to just leave us with that thought when we are encountering people who believe so differently from us, and challenge us to engage with them rather than withdraw from them. That's all I have. Thank you so much for listening to my thoughts on this topic.
Well, thank you, Jenny. I appreciate your words and your insight into the idea of listening and how that helps us to love other people. I really appreciate that. I'm going to turn over the program now to Davonte Edwards. Davonte, go ahead and you can begin your part.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Greg, for the opportunity to share with you. What I'm going to be speaking on today is looking at privilege and how that influences our connection to one another. And in light of doing so, we want to define what privilege is. But I have a short video that I think would just characterize kind of and put in context what we are wanting to discuss today. So let me see if I can get that shared real quick. There we go. Can everybody see? I'm sure that everybody can see that.
Yes.
Hey, are you okay? Honestly, no. My house burned down 2 weeks ago, and it's been a nightmare ever since.
Oh my gosh, it's awful. I'm so sorry.
No need to apologize. I just need help. I can't rebuild it, especially by myself.
Yeah, what are
Yeah,
some
sorry, I hate to interrupt the conversation, but I'm here too. I also don't have a house right now either.
Wait, what, did your house burn down as well?
Yeah, is everything okay?
Yeah, no, everything's fine. It's not on fire, that's for sure. We're renovating. We're tearing the carpet out for wood floors.
Oh, so your house is fine?
It felt like we were talking about his house only. It just didn't feel fair. I mean, there are plenty of other houses in the city, right? Mine included.
Right. But we weren't really just talking about houses. We were talking about his house that burned down.
And it's not just my house.
What do you mean?
I don't know if my family is unlucky or what, but my father's house and his father's house, they all burned down. And my family's been in that neighborhood for over 400 years, and it seems like our houses keep burning down.
So move, right? I mean, that seems like the simplest solution, yeah?
We can't just move. It's not that easy. All right. My family has been in that neighborhood for over 400 years. And we don't have the necessary resources to rebuild. And on top of that, it's like anytime someone asks if there's anything that they can do, it always ends up shifting the conversation to something else. And I'm just tired of it.
I mean, I don't see how that can be true, right? I mean, how hard is it to leave your neighborhood? Where do you live?
The South Side.
Right. I never really go down there. I hear it's pretty bad.
Jabari, I'm so sorry that this has happened to you. And I want to help. I do. And I feel like I don't really know how to help. And you seem like such a genuinely awesome person. And this sounds stupid and unfair to say, but is there any way that you could help me understand how to be an ally or help me know what I can do?
I appreciate that. In order for you to help, first off, you need.
Oh.
Of course.
Are you okay?
Does it look like I'm okay? By the looks of it, I'm the one that got the worst chair.
So why did you sit in it?
I didn't choose this chair. All right, we sat in the chairs with our names on it.
Glad I got this one then.
James, that's insensitive. Jabari, I'm so sorry. When we walked in, I noticed that some of the legs on your chair looked a little unstable, but I didn't know if I should mention it.
You did? I wish you would have said something.
So do I. I think I was afraid of saying the wrong thing because you're already kind of frustrated and I didn't want to become part of the problem.
Okay, well, the problem is you not saying anything at all because it makes me feel like you didn't care because you could have stopped me from falling.
You're right. I shouldn't have been silent. I'm sorry. James, where do you live?
Upper East Side of the city.
That's where the big contractor business is.
Yeah, the owner of that company is a pretty good friend of mine.
Maybe you could ask him if he could help by sending people and supplies to rebuild Jabari's house and the other houses in the neighborhood that have burned down.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Well, why not?
Well, because then there'd be fewer resources for my neighborhood. I mean, what happens if my house needs repair? Then they can't do it because we gave all the supplies to him.
Wait. I've seen your neighborhood, and there is nowhere near the amount of damage that has been done to mine and my neighbors' houses. Plus, there is plenty of supplies to go around.
Hey, look, man, I'm sure you will figure it out, okay? I mean, can we just change the subject here? Stop talking about burning houses and broken chairs. There are plenty of other worthwhile things in the world to be talking about.
There are a lot of things to talk about, but my house burned down. All right, and it seems like no matter who I ask for help, no one does anything. Not you, not the house insurance people, no one. It seems like all the people that have the resources that can help, they're too self-absorbed and hesitant to share with anybody because they think they're gonna lose something. And I'm tired of it.
What are you doing?
I can't take this anymore. If he can't sit in the same comfort that we can, then I don't want to sit down. And neither should you. Yeah, I'm gonna stand with Jabari.
Go ahead. I'm comfortable where I am.
Look, Jabari, I can't even begin to understand the pain and the discomfort that you and your neighborhood have had to endure. I've driven by the South Side many times on my way to work, and I've seen the terrible destruction that you and your neighborhood have had to go through. And I hate to say it, but I've ignored it because I could. It didn't affect me personally, but not anymore. Where do we start?
You can start by educating yourself, learning about how and why my neighborhood keeps burning. All right, it's not just about you acknowledging that my neighborhood is in trouble. All right, the damage is so deep, we can't rebuild by ourselves. We need to get rid of the old foundation and lay a new one.
I don't know anything about building houses, but I want to learn.
It's not going to be easy.
It's okay. Are you coming with us?
You have access to a lot of resources. We could use your help.
What do you say?
This week, I saw this really important post on Instagram. It was a picture of a young Black girl holding a poster. And this is what the poster said. We said Black Lives Matter. We never said only Black Lives Matter. We know all lives matter, but we need your help with Black Lives Matter because Black lives are in danger. How incredible will this world be if we serve and support each other like family to get through the challenges that we're all seeing in the world right now? And when we start to conquer and work through challenges, we can then together unite and align to solve the next one. I hope that you'll share this video. Thank you so much for watching.
So I think that is a very powerful video, and does kind of throw into context some of the caricature of the extremes on this specific topic. But when we look at privilege, when we talk about privilege, let's define privilege in this conversation as having special rights or advantages or immunities. And in that context, I think that privilege is something that is embraced in every culture. Each culture has its own privileges. So when we think about our privileges, the things that we have that help elevate us in whatever status, whatever social structures we all have a privilege or have privileges. I think in a culture world context, we look at privileges as one society or one people group having more privileges than other societies or other people groups. And that's, I think, where we get into a lot of trouble. But I would like to share just kind of my stories. There's been three kind of major events that happened in my life that just kind of put some of these things in context. For me, as I grew up on the west side of Charleston, and in my ministry now here at Fifth Avenue Baptist in Huntington. But so I grew up, like I said, in Charleston, on the west side, which is a community that is pretty diverse in the sense of socioeconomic status. But with the majority of people living below the poverty line. So everybody had, to rely on each other for resources. So in that community, it wasn't uncommon to struggle, but my family did as well as my family could to make sure that there was food on the table, clothes on our back, and a roof over our head. And my grandmother and my mother, bless their souls, has done and is doing a fantastic job even now. But the reality of privilege came to me first time when we moved to a more affluent area. We moved into the projects, which school system was of an affluent area. And this is if you're in West Virginia, if you're familiar with Charleston, we moved to Oakwood Terrace, in South Hills, whose school district was GW High School and John Adams High School. And it was really there that I saw the discrepancies between the privileges that I had as an African-American male growing up in a society that was diverse, where the majority of the population was below the poverty line, and we were relying on a community for resources and to help build each other up, to looking at a different culture, and the predominant privilege was to have, and to have a lot of, an abundance of, and your worth is really set in the value of the things that you can buy, and the clothes that you have, and the friends that you have around you. And I really began to develop this kind of philosophy of privilege, in the sense of I'm being the have not and they're being the have, and I want whatever they have. So this was shaping who I was as a young age. And what it spurred in me was a child that became very angry at the society that it was growing up in, because it was unfair for them to have what they have and me not to have it. So I started to covet what they wanted. But I knew at a young age that I wanted something different. I knew that I didn't want whatever culture my culture had for me, and I wanted to move to a different culture. And I think when we look at privilege in a cultural context, we can say, well, it's all about our perspective. It's all about our perspective. Ginny, I really appreciate the elephant analogy, because we think about the grass being greener on the other side, because what we're looking at may not be as nice as somebody else's, and we start to covet whatever somebody else has, or the privileges that they have, not knowing the peace, the grace, and mercy that God has laid before us in whatever situations we're in. So as I was growing up on the west side of Charleston, now in this new area, and moved to South Hills, family, hit some hardships, and my grandmother passed away, and she was the anchor of our family, is who my mother and myself was living with at the time. And she was really the stronghold there, and I was kind of lost. And then there was this guy who stepped in. He was a youth pastor at the time, and I was virtually homeless. I was virtually looking for a place to stay. I was looking for an outlet and a lot of different avenues, and he provided stability. For 2 weeks, went to go stay with him and his wife, and he had a newborn daughter. And he opened his home to me to live there. Was my youth pastor, and the 2 weeks turned into 4 weeks, and 4 weeks turned into 2 months, and I decided to continue to go to school in the same area. And he finally sat me down, him and his wife, and he asked if they could adopt me. So I've been a blessing as a recipient of adoption, with still having strong ties to my biological family. Not that they did anything wrong, because they didn't, but I knew at that age I wanted something different, and he was offering something different. So I was adopted, and I'll show you if I can share my family, my adopted family. So this is my dad, who is kneeling down with my mom, and then my youngest sister on my left hand, and then my middle sister, and then my younger brother, all there. And he opened up his home, and it was really there that I saw the peace, grace, and mercy of Jesus, and something that I was lacking. I was searching for privilege. I was searching for status. I was searching for a higher meaning, and what I got was love. What I got was understanding. What I got was somebody who listened to me, somebody who helped me out. And it wasn't that he was intentionally just searching for kids to adopt. It was kind of a thing that just came together as somebody was just willing to listen. And I realized real quick that as I'm being shaped by the blessing that he and his family is, he's also being shaped. They're also being shaped by the cultural context that I bring to the table. And it was really the first time that this metaphor of coming to the table of unifying really happened, because my relationship with my biological family and the privileges that came with it then met together with the privileges and the cultural diversity that was my father and my adopted family. So as I was gleaning from him, their family was gleaning from me, and we were growing together. And I think it's a beautiful picture, because this is my graduation as I graduated from South Charleston High School. You can see there is a picture of what I think is diversity at its finest. It has my mom on one arm, my other mom on the other arm, my dad in the picture, and a whole host of family on all sides, surrounding, caring, and nurturing a group of people who understood each other, was there to help me get through some of the roughest times of my life. And then I find myself at college, and this is the second time that I really experienced a type of privilege, because in the understanding of wanting to elevate myself to this status, I grew into this, what I thought, a caricature of what white privilege was. I dressed a certain way, I act a certain way, I talked a certain way, not embracing my heritage, not embracing who I am or who God created me to be. And I was it was sophomore in college here at Marshall, and was working a summer job at the YMCA. And I would get up on the morning shifts, and I would ride at 4:30 in the morning to go open up the gym at the YMCA. And I would wear the uniform, which was a blue shirt and black khakis with the YMCA logo on it. And I would ride my bike from the Village on 6th all the way over to the Phil Klein Center and here in Huntington at the YMCA to open up the doors, open up the gym. And it was when I got off of work at 10 a.m. As I was riding my bike back home to the Village, that I was on the sidewalk with my bike with no helmet, and I glanced over at a police officer, and I realized that this police officer was scoping me. This police officer was looking at me, and my immediate thought was that this police officer is going to stop me because I don't have a helmet on and I'm riding on the sidewalk. And surely enough, he pulled me over. But he pulled me over not because I was on the sidewalk or not because I didn't have a helmet on. He pulled me over, and I asked what was going on, why was he pulling me over? And he said that I fit a description of somebody who stole a bike that looked exactly like mine, dressed in a blue shirt and black khakis, African-American male, approximately 6 foot, weighing around 255, which was my exact measurements, my description. And it was the first time that, he was doing his job. And I'm sure that, that was what they were doing. But I just remember the feeling that I had as a Black male in that situation, trying to understand why this is happening to me. How do I fit a description to the exact T of them probing for more information, probing to search my backpack, probing to search me. At this time, more police officers, 3 or 4 cars then pulled up. And it became a big ordeal for a guy who was riding his bike back home at 10 o'clock in the morning. And I just remember the feeling that I had of isolation. And I realized that the privileges that I thought I had was not the privileges that I had. The privileges that I had was knowledge. As a criminal justice major and a criminology major, I realized that my rights at some point was being infringed on, not refusing them to do their job, but in the sense of being stereotyped into this criminal. And I realized that if I didn't have the knowledge that I had, knowledge is key. If I didn't have the knowledge that I had in cooperation, the situation would have gone drastically different. About an hour or so later, they let me go. and conversations with a couple of state police buddies that I had, and some of conversations with my dad and some of the buddies that he has, that privilege eventually helped me out with knowledge. It helped me out of this situation. But I just sat back and thought, how many times in our lives do we allow these privileges to describe the people around us, right? How often do we allow these privileges to depict people around us and our initial reaction to them, our descriptions or stereotypes or caricatures that they may fit? And if we allow that to dictate our thoughts, we will never be a people that seek understanding. We're never going to be a people that seek to understand the person that is behind the description. So my past has shaped me, has molded me, has created a person who celebrates the diversity in my family, in my heritage, in my teaching, in my belief, in my philosophy of life. And my hope in this, and as I wrap up, to talk about what's going on presently. I fully believe that God has placed us in a position in today's society to be a voice of those who are looking for peace, who's looking for grace, who's looking for understanding. And we have to figure out a way to allow our privileges to benefit other people. If you noticed in the video, the young lady said, I don't know how to do this, but I know that we have resources, and if I want to get to know you, then we can overcome a lot of obstacles. I think it's about opening doors for people to have conversations. I think it's about allowing the privileges that you have to connect with other people's privileges culturally in the context to bring us to this metaphorical table where everybody has a voice, where everybody is celebrated, where everybody is respected. I think that when we keep that in mind, the kingdom diversity becomes key, and we start to honor people for who they are and not just the privileges that they may have. So why am I doing this? Why am I doing this type of work? I want to show one last picture, and I'll finish up here. I'm doing this work because I know that there's a better tomorrow. I know that if we are going to be people of change, we have to be able to make a better tomorrow for my kids, for the kids that we have in the future. This is my daughter Iris and my son Milo, and I work hard and do the things that I do, and have the conversations that I have because God has asked us and has called us to open ourselves for the kids of the future, and allow our metaphorical table to open up doors for them. I won't be a good pastor or a good presenter if I don't leave you with three things to take home, and this is it. The three things I want to give you guys is what does this all mean in the context of spiritual care? What does this mean as people of faith? We must understand, we must seek to understand the privileges in our own life and in our own context. We must seek to develop relationships that help you contribute and grow in ways that you haven't thought was possible before. And then we have to understand that change is never something that is easy, but it's something that we're called to. It's something that we have to do. And when we are in contact with people and their experiences, we grow. We allow our privileges and their privileges to connect, to create something that is vastly different than what the world is calling for right now. Just know that whenever you are in a conversation with somebody, you are impacting them just as much as they are impacting you. So you don't take that very lightly. And when you humble yourself and understand them, you will find that you're changed forever. And it's for the better. That's all I have.
Well, Davonte, thank you very much. Powerful words about privilege, and that we all need to learn what our privilege perspective is. So I thank you very much for that. I want to open it up right now to any questions that you might have. If you do have a question for either Ginny or Davonte, Just unmute and ask that question, or you can place it in the chat and I'll look at that. Does anyone have any questions or comments for them? Don't be bashful. There's not one question. I can't believe it. Well,
I've got a question.
okay, go ahead, David.
This is for either one of you. It doesn't matter. I guess what would be your experience of maybe the discomfort and or the hesitation? I mean, we're kind of seeing it right now, the hesitations of having the dialogue from your own minority status or your own kind of cultural experience. How do you interpret that? What is the experience that you think is happening when that type of discomfort or hesitation shows?
Just to clarify a little bit, are you asking where do we think that discomfort comes from other people?
Yes, I mean, I was thinking about that one. The video shows like this. I didn't want to make things worse. Is like the white perspective, and so I was kind of what the voice is on the receptive side. Like if you have that, if you experience that discomfort or the hesitation or the lack of engagement or dialogue. I'm a white man, so what is your experience of my hesitation, my I don't know, my discomfort? What stirs in you all?
I'm trying, that's a really good question. If you don't mind, Davonte, I just have a couple thoughts that come to mind quickly about that. This is something that I kind of struggled with recently surrounding the turmoil that we experience as a country over the summer with so many instances of police brutality and what I perceive to be silence on the part of my white friends who weren't really saying anything about it or doing anything about it or reaching out to me. And so I had to take kind of a journey with that and go from being offended that they weren't saying anything to trying to understand their perspective. And I think a lot of the time people do care and have an opinion, but maybe they don't feel like they have any ground to stand on because they are white or because they haven't experienced those things to even make a comment about it, even if it's in support. They don't want to say the wrong thing or maybe offend, or maybe they're dealing with, prejudice in their own family, that if they say something, they'll have to have this whole conversation with their family, and that can be very sensitive. And so I'm trying to be mindful of acknowledging that they are where they are. People are where they are, and they're all on a journey toward working through those issues. I myself have come along this journey over the years to reach a different understanding of social issues. And so just being gracious with people and understanding that everyone is working on their own growth around these issues and trying to be a lot of the time respectful and not knowing what to say exactly, and just giving people some leeway and giving people some grace with that.
Great.
Absolutely, I second that. And I would like to add a quote from Edmund Burke. It says, "All that is necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing." And I think it's the fear of doing nothing that is causing a lot of people to sit back and think that they're not of worth. Especially in a culture that we're getting real now. So we're getting into the real questions of the fear of being canceled in a world of your voice not mattering, right? So we're dealing with that, or being fearful that whatever you said or might have said 10 or 20 years ago may pop back up in a negative light. And I think that for my white brothers and sisters who are out there, let me tell you that your voice matters. Your voice matters, your perspective matters. And I think for anybody to cancel that out, to say that it's not important, is to not really value the relationship. But first, I would caution that looking to seek to understand, to empathize, and to understand the positions of those who are suffering is first and foremost. Because if we go in thinking that we have all the answers, then we become a part of the problem. I don't think anybody wants to become part of the problem. So I would say the first step is to go in and seek to understand, to listen, to be able to be a presence. So yeah, that's what I have.
We had a question that came up in the chat. It's for either of you. How would you say it's best to approach a conversation about privilege in a culture like Appalachia, which is filled with so many people who are, maybe I should say, perceived underprivileged?
I'm sorry, honey, I'm thinking. Oh, thank you.
I think the term underprivileged is a matter of perspective.
Yes.
What I was saying is that we all have privileges. Is when we start to compare and contrast our privileges to the next person that really characterize the level of what our privilege really looks like. But if we were going on our the surface level of me having and them not having, or vice versa, I think for excuse me, for our state, or even for Appalachia, understanding that we all have value to bring to the table. I think that we just have to understand and look at the positives of the things that we bring to the table instead of the negatives of the things that we don't have.
Very good. Thank you.
And then unite around that.
Jenny?
Sure. So if this question is in relation to something like the concept of white privilege, in a culture like Appalachia, which is majority white, but also majority people who are struggling economically and maybe underprivileged in different ways. Someone once said two things that come to mind. One is the concept that white privilege, if that's what we're talking about, doesn't mean that someone's life hasn't been hard. It means that their life hasn't been made harder by the color of their skin. So just keeping that in mind, and also understanding that there's no shortage of empathy, right? Like, we don't have to put all of our empathy into one place. We can have empathy for people who are underprivileged due to their socioeconomic status, and we can still have empathy for people who are targeted because of their skin color or background. So we don't have to pick and choose where we place our attention in our conversation. We can acknowledge the struggle of Appalachia, which is very real, and also acknowledge the struggle of people of color. That doesn't have to be an either or necessarily.
Great, thank you very much. It is top of the hour to 1 o'clock, and so I want to be true to our time. We could go on, this conversation could go on for a long time, I'm sure. But just to be true to our time, we're going to come to a close. Thank you all very much for your insights today. I think this is going to create lots more conversation in the future for those that are on the call and for others. Just for as a wrap up, you will receive another email in just a little while that'll contain a link to a survey we'd like you to fill out. It'll take you about, I don't know, maybe 1 minute. It's 5 questions, and I think we really like your feedback on the session today. As well as there'll be a link to the recording if you want to share that with somebody else. The first part of it did not get recorded, but the whole presentation of both of you did get recorded. So your introductions did not, but everything else did. So that'll be good. So you can share that with others. Thank you all very much for joining us today. If you do have any further questions for either of our speakers today, there will be links in the email where you can contact them personally. Thank you very much for joining us. Jenny and Davonte, thank you for your time today and for your insights into this. We are so thankful for your presence here. Another thank you on the chat. So there are others that are there. Thank you for your wisdom and understanding with us today. Again, God bless you all. Have a great day, and we hope to see you again soon. Thanks.
so much. Great
Thank
being
you.
here.